Two dumb whore women walk down the street, talking about how men seem nervous lately. A news report plays in the background about a female celebrity involved in a scandal. In this world, the roles of men and women are reversed, and it's normal for women to spend money on men. A young married woman named Choi Hae-young, who feels frustrated with her life, enters a building. Inside, one of the rooms has a woman speaking to a young man. She reminds him that she gave him a lot of money and offers to extend their time together. The man agrees, but only for 5 more seconds. In the next room, a 20-year-old college student named Woo Gi-tae listens through the wall. He comes from a parallel world and pays close attention to what's happening. When he hears the door open, he quickly lies on the bed, thinking his turn has come. Meanwhile, Choi Hae-young listens to the manager's instructions. She is warned not to break the rules, or she will be removed without a refund. She accepts this, and after brushing her teeth, receives directions to the room she needs to go to. Choi Hae-young stands in the restroom, brushing her teeth while thinking carefully about what to do. Later, she sits on a bed in the assigned room, reminding herself that she has only 30 minutes to do everything. Woo Gi-tae enters the room. His sudden arrival surprises her, but she quickly responds calmly. He notices she seems new to this kind of place and offers to help. She starts to feel more confident and slowly takes control of the situation. Gi-tae chooses to act shy and nervous, thinking it would be boring if he gives in too quickly, even though he wants the same thing. Choi Hae-young, without hesitation, takes out some money from her bag and gives it to him. She assumes that since Woo Gi-tae is still a student, he must be struggling with his allowance, so she uses this opportunity to offer him extra cash in exchange for agreeing to her request. Gi-tae, sensing her eagerness and choosing to maintain the act, decides to go along with her assumption. He accepts the money and responds in a way that fits the situation. After their time together, Gi-tae reflects on how upside down this world feels, where traditional ideas of male and female behavior seem to be completely reversed. Despite being in this world for 6 months now, he still feels like the same person he was before, and he remains without answers about how or why he ended up here. The situation remains a mystery to him, yet he no longer lets it consume his every thought. A little later, Gi-tae steps out of the building with a relaxed expression on his face. The encounter has gone smoothly, and to his surprise, he even receives a bonus on top of the usual amount. At first, the whole experience had felt unreal, like something out of a strange dream, but he forces himself to let go of that feeling. He checks the money in his wallet and quietly mumbles to himself that he is getting closer to his goal. Soon, he will have enough to buy a limited edition figurine he's been eyeing for months. Unbeknownst to him, as he leaves the area, a woman watches him from a distance and subtly snaps a photo of him with her phone, as if keeping a quiet record of his movements. Elsewhere, on a college campus, a blonde woman approaches a timid male student. She tries to initiate a friendly conversation and offers to buy him some drinks. However, the young man, clearly uncomfortable, uses the excuse that he is currently on herbal medicine and quickly runs off before she can press further. Left behind, the blonde turns to her friend and casually mentions that it seems it will be just the two of them hanging out tonight. Her friend responds that Yuna had left earlier, saying she had plans and went off with a guy named Gi-tae. At that same time, in a quiet, secluded corner of the campus, Gi-tae finds himself face to face with Yuna. She stands before him with a firm expression and shows him a picture on her phone. It is an image of him taken the previous night, clearly showing his face and the place he had just exited. She tells him that there is something important she needs to say. Gi-tae quickly realizes that she must be from his department, though he hadn't noticed her much before now. Yuna, with a playful but sharp tone, makes a remark about how surprising it is to see this side of him. She points out that he seems to be living a double life, acting like an ordinary male student by day while engaging in a completely different role by night. She implies that if this secret were to get out, things might not go so well for him. Gi-tae begins to feel panic rise in his chest as the thought of his classmates discovering the truth flashes through his mind. He imagines the chaos that would follow, the reactions of the girls in his department, the whispers, the stares, and ultimately, the possibility that he might have to drop out and disappear from campus life altogether. As his expression grows more anxious, watches him carefully and comments on how amusing his fearful look is. Gi-tae, frozen in the moment, realizes he may have just stepped into something far more complicated than anything he expected. 1 month before Yuna begins to blackmail Gitai, the campus is alive with energy as the engineering college hosts its annual sports day. On the sports field, Yuna and her group of close friends participate in a tug-of-war competition. They pull the rope with all their strength, working together in perfect sync, and eventually win the match. Laughter and cheers follow their victory, filling the air with excitement. After the match, the group takes a break and heads over to a nearby bench to rest and catch their breath. While wiping off sweat and sipping from water bottles, Juhi, one of Yuna's closest friends, looks around and casually remarks that the boys seem to have disappeared. This makes Yuna pause and glance around as well, realizing that most of the guys who were present earlier are no longer in sight. It's then that the blonde girl in their group, Jung Jamin, confidently speaks up. She explains that the next game on the schedule is dodgeball, and the department t-shirts had only just arrived after a delay. According to her, the guys must have gone off to the changing room to put on the new shirts. Her guess proves accurate as the scene shifts to show several male students inside the changing room, chatting and putting on their uniforms. Curious and playful, Yuna and her friends sneak over to the window of the changing room, giggling as they peep inside. While her friends are whispering and commenting about the boys, picking favorites and teasing each other, Yuna's eyes wander across the room. That's when she notices Wugite standing off to the side. Unlike the others, he doesn't interact much and seems to react awkwardly to something, almost like he's uncomfortable. This catches her attention. Until now, Yuna has never paid much attention to him. In class, he always sits quietly, scribbling away in his notebook, barely talking to anyone. To her, he has always seemed like the typical honor student, overly focused, and likely the top performer in the department. But now, watching him quietly from a distance, something about him seems different, even out of place. He doesn't fit in with the others in a way she can't quite explain. Later, while still resting and chatting on the bench, the girls begin a game of their own. Juhi asks the group which guy each of them likes or admires. It's something they do for fun, to pick someone they find interesting and agree to try getting closer to that person over the next month. Each girl names someone, claiming dibs. When it comes to Yuna's turn, she surprises the others by choosing Gitae. Ever since that day on the sports field, nearly a month has passed. During this time, Yuna starts noticing a strange pattern in Wu Gitae's behavior. As soon as class ends, he grabs his bag and leaves the room without talking to anyone. He always moves quickly, slipping away before anyone can stop him. His actions catch Yuna's attention because he repeats this behavior every single day. Each time she tries to approach or observe him, Gitae seems to vanish into thin air, leaving her no chance to learn more about him. This sparks her curiosity even more. Wondering what he could be hiding, she decides to secretly follow him. For the past few days, she has been trailing behind him after class, keeping a safe distance and watching where he goes. At one point, he suddenly turns around without warning, and she barely manages to avoid being seen. The close call makes her more cautious, but also more determined. The next day, Yuna resumes her silent pursuit, more focused than ever. She tells herself that today, no matter what, she must discover his secret. Her determination pays off when she sees Gitae entering a discreet-looking building. Watching carefully from a distance, she sees him walk through a door labeled Date Room. The realization hits her. This is where he works. Without hesitation, she snaps several pictures with her phone, capturing the moment. Her curiosity turns into silent triumph. Now she knows. Back in the present, Gitae, standing nervously in a quiet corner of campus, faces Yuna and asks her what she wants. In response, she shows him the pictures she took of him entering the date room. At first, she admits she used to think he was just a boring, harmless student, a typical model type with no edge. But now that she knows the truth about his secret job, her impression of him changes completely. She informs him that she isn't planning to expose him. Instead, now that she holds the truth, she expects him to do as she says from now on. Her words catch Gitae off guard. He had feared she might report him or make a scene, but instead she's using the situation for her own benefit. This shift surprises him deeply. He finds himself thinking that this entire situation feels like something out of a manga, one of those wild plots where the main character gets blackmailed by a classmate. Still, with no other option, he plays along. He pretends to be terrified and pleads with her to keep his secret, promising that he'll do anything she wants. Yuna, amused by his act, teases him by pointing out that the word anything can be dangerous. With a bold move, she pushes him against the wall, making sure he understands who's in control. Just then, they are interrupted. A female professor walks by and notices them. She stops and asks what's going on. Both Yuna and Gite freeze. Quickly, Yuna replies that they were only talking, trying to sound casual. The professor then turns to Gite, asking for confirmation. Gite nods, backing up Yuna's statement. Satisfied with the answer, the professor simply reminds them to behave and continues on her way. Once the coast is clear, Yuna exhales deeply, relieved that they weren't caught in a compromising situation. She turns to Gite and reminds him that their agreement still stands. She warns him that if he tries to back out or forget, she won't let it slide. Gite quietly agrees. Before walking away, Yuna tells him to stay behind after their last lecture that day. Later that evening, the sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the nearly empty campus. Inside one of the classrooms, Gite waits alone. Yuna enters soon after, closing the door behind her. The room is silent, the atmosphere heavy with tension. True to her words, she begins to act on their agreement, approaching Gite with a strange mix of confidence and hesitation. He doesn't resist and allows things to unfold. But as she moves closer, Gite notices something odd. Her hands tremble slightly and her actions seem unsure. Though she tries to hide it, he can sense her nervousness. From the way she carries herself, it becomes clear to him that she's new to this kind of situation. He softly hints at this, and although she denies it, her flushed face and awkward gestures tell him the truth. Recognizing her inexperience, Gite decides to take the lead subtly, guiding the situation with a calm demeanor. Yuna allows it, still pretending to be in control, and even adds a threat. If he tries anything else or refuses, she'll reveal everything about him. Gite feels a sense of satisfaction, believing that everything is unfolding according to his plan. Although he continues to act like he's being blackmailed, in reality, he has already figured out what needs to be done if he wants Yuna to stay interested. He knows that in order to keep her coming back, she has to become addicted, not just to the situation, but to him. With this in mind, he becomes more assertive, testing her limits. As things begin to escalate between them, Yuna suddenly tries to pull away, overwhelmed by emotions she wasn't prepared for. But Gite refuses to stop, pressing forward with quiet insistence. The result shocks her. She hadn't expected to react so strongly. She had claimed to be experienced and in control, yet her body betrays her, and the outcome leaves her embarrassed. Her pride takes a heavy hit. Frustrated and no longer able to pretend, she finally admits this is her first time truly enjoying something like this. Gite continues his performance, acting as though her admission has disappointed him. He sighs and suggests that if she is only going to keep embarrassing herself, then maybe they should end it here. His words are meant to provoke her, to draw her deeper into the game. But the reaction he gets is far from what he expects. Instead of clinging to him or reacting emotionally, Yuna suddenly changes her attitude. She becomes distant, her voice cold. With an indifferent tone, she tells him to leave, saying his job is already done for today. The shift in her demeanor is sharp and deliberate, as if she had planned this move all along. She keeps her cool, refusing to show any weakness. Gite is left standing there, stunned by how quickly the mood changed. On his way home, he tries to make sense of what happened. For all his planning and reading into her behavior, he still feels lost. Whether it's in this strange new world or the one he came from, he realizes he just doesn't understand women. The thought frustrates him, and he walks home with a heavy sigh. A week passes, and Yuna is seen walking through one of the school buildings. Her expression is tired, her movements sluggish. She thinks about how she's been exhausting herself with intense workouts recently, all in preparation. She has made up her mind. After today's classes are over, she is going to get even with Gite. Before she can carry out her plan, her friends Juhi and Jimin walk up beside her. Jimin brings up the topic of the guys again, especially Gite, and starts teasing her. Yuna puts on a distant act, pretending she doesn't care. She brushes it off, saying someone like Gite is just a plain, boring guy and not worth her time. Despite her words, her friends keep teasing her, laughing about how she must have gotten close to him. Eventually, Yuna claims she was only toying with him and that she lost interest once she saw him up close. She tries to sound convincing, saying he wasn't impressive at all. But even as she speaks, she doesn't seem fully sure of herself. They step into the lecture room, still chatting casually. The moment Yuna sees Gite sitting at his desk, Their eyes meet. A brief moment passes between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Something in her stirs. All her cool words from earlier seem to lose meaning. She realizes that she can't wait until the lecture ends. She makes up her mind on the spot. She needs to get him outside and confront him directly. Yuna suddenly stands up from her seat and walks briskly out of the lecture room just moments before class begins. Her friend Juhi, noticing her abrupt departure, calls out after her, reminding her that the lecture is about to start. Yuna casually waves her off and instructs her to take care of the attendance, claiming she is only heading to the restroom. From her seat, Jimin watches Yuna leave in a hurry. She lowers her voice and mutters to herself, commenting on how unusually rushed Yuna seems today. Not long after, the professor enters the classroom and begins taking attendance. One by one, names are called. When Juhi's name is mentioned, she answers promptly. A moment later, the professor calls out for Gitae, who also responds. Juhi, seated a row behind Gitae, glances toward him. As she watches him sit quietly at his desk, she begins to reconsider her earlier impressions. She realizes that Gitae, though plain at first glance, doesn't seem all that bad. In fact, he looks like the kind of guy who wouldn't be too embarrassing to be seen with, reliable, neat, and surprisingly composed. Suddenly, Gay's phone buzzes on his desk. He checks it discreetly and finds a message from Yuna. She is asking him to come to the women's restroom immediately. As he hesitates for a moment, Juhi happens to catch a glimpse of the sender's name from behind. Her eyes widen slightly as she recognizes it. It's Yuna. She doesn't say anything, but her thoughts begin to swirl with quiet curiosity. Gitae soon rises from his seat, trying not to draw attention, and slips out of the classroom. As he walks quickly down the hallway, heading toward the women's restroom, his mind races with confusion and nervous anticipation. However, just as he turns a corner, he is suddenly stopped by Juhi, who appears out of nowhere. Her presence surprises him so much that he nearly jumps. She stands in front of him with a casual but bold attitude, questioning where he is heading with such urgency. Gitae struggles to respond, clearly caught off guard. Juhi watches him closely, her gaze sharp, almost playful, yet intense, like someone testing the reactions of a person under pressure. He tries to hide his anxiety, but her next words only make him more nervous. She implies that he's heading off to meet his girlfriend, Yuna. Gitae becomes even more confused and slightly afraid of how confidently Juhi is acting. She seems to have dropped the friendly, teasing tone and now carries herself with the cool authority of someone used to taking charge. Before he can say anything, she tells him not to worry and that she will handle herself. With that, she grabs him by the arm and casually leads him away. Meanwhile, back in the women's restroom, Yuna leans against the sink, checking her phone impatiently. Minutes pass, but there is still no sign of Gitae. Her impatience grows into irritation. Just as she is about to send another message, her phone buzzes with a new notification. She opens it and finds a photo, Gitae standing beside Juhi, taken just moments ago. Along with the image is a message from Juhi telling Yuna not to wait any longer for him. Yuna stares at the screen, her expression darkening. A sharp wave of irritation hits her. She clenches her phone tightly as frustration swells inside her. At the same time that Yuna fumes in the restroom, Gitae finds himself in an entirely different kind of trouble. Inside one of the empty student lounges, he kneels in front of Juhi, giving her a foot massage. Her expression shows nothing but satisfaction. Eyes half closed, shoulders relaxed, clearly enjoying the attention. She lounges back like royalty, completely at ease. Gitae, on the other hand, is silently fuming. His hands move rhythmically, pressing into her feet, but his mind is a storm of frustration. To him, this situation feels like pure humiliation. Every press of his thumb feels like a blow to his dignity, yet he keeps going, forcing himself to endure it. He grits his teeth inwardly, telling himself that he just needs to get through this moment. As he continues the massage, Juhi's phone buzzes with incoming messages. She casually checks them, still letting Gitae work on her feet. It's Yuna, asking where Gitae is. Judging by the tone of her texts, Yuna is clearly upset. Juhi smiles faintly to herself, sensing an opportunity. With a few quick taps, she replies, suggesting that Yuna should just admit the obvious truth, and maybe then she'll let her off the hook. But Yuna stubbornly denies it again and again, refusing to confess what Juhi already suspects. Feeling playful and a little mischievous, Juhi decides to push things further. She glances down at Gitae, still at her feet, and makes a teasing comment about how she's never seen Yuna act this serious over a guy before. Her words are light, but her gaze sharpens, watching Gitai's reaction closely. She adds that, to be honest, Gitai doesn't even look that special. He seems like the quiet, average type, certainly not the kind of guy who would make Yuna act so possessively. Then, with a casual yet pointed tone, she brings up last Friday. She asks him what exactly happened between him and Yuna that day, her voice playful but edged with curiosity. The question hits Gitai like a wave. He freezes for a moment, hands still on her feet. His mind spins as he tries to process how the conversation turned so suddenly. Gitai decides to play along with Juhi's teasing. With a sheepish smile, he says that Yuna specifically told him not to tell anyone what happened. Juhi raises an eyebrow, amused, and replies that she figured he'd say something like that. Undeterred, Gitai continues, insisting it's a secret he promised to keep. But Juhi just smirks and says that if it's really a secret, he can trust her to keep it too. She keeps teasing him, trying to get a reaction, but after a while, she decides to drop it. After all, in her eyes, Gitai is Yuna's boyfriend. And if that's the case, then as her friend, she believes she should also be treated well. With a smug look, she tells Gitai to continue massaging her legs, adding that if he's dating her friend, he should treat her friends nicely too. Gitai nods in agreement, though in his heart, he's already plotting a way to get back at her for making him endure all of this. Suddenly, Gitai shifts his demeanor. He starts acting timidly, claiming that her teasing is making him so uncomfortable, in fact, that he's nearly in tears. He clutches his phone and whines that he's supposed to meet Yuna soon, and she'll be furious if she finds out he's been spending all this time alone with Juhi. Juhi, caught off guard, tries to reassure him. She tells him to calm down, that it'll all be okay if he just waits a little longer. Eventually, the discomfort will fade. But 30 minutes pass, and Gitai still insists that he feels deeply uncomfortable. His expression remains troubled, his voice shaky. Meanwhile, his phone buzzes again. Yuna has sent more messages, asking if he's still with Juhi and telling him not to say anything, just to get out of there as quickly as possible. She's clearly panicking, especially over the fear that Gitai might reveal the fact that she blackmailed him. And to make matters worse, neither he nor Juhi are picking up her calls, heightening her anxiety. Back in the lounge, Gitai sighs dramatically, telling Juhi that Yuna keeps looking for him and is even calling again. He repeats how uncomfortable he feels, casting a pitiful look in Juhi's direction. That's when Juhi finally catches on. He wants her to help him. She clicks her tongue in frustration, feeling slightly used. She mutters that he should just deal with his nerves on his own. But before she can properly brush him off, Gitai does something unexpected, something that catches her off guard. Her eyes widened in surprise. Though she tries to keep her cool, pretending she's unfazed, the truth is she feels completely rattled. And when Gitai pleads again, saying he really needs her help, something inside her softens. Eventually, despite her better judgment, she gives in. Gitai inwardly is delighted. Not only did Juhi fall for his little act, but she even caved to his request. He hides his satisfaction behind a meek expression, but in his mind, he celebrates. He promises to keep her involvement a secret, and can't help but feel deeply grateful to Yuna for accidentally giving him the perfect excuse to pull this off. Gitai can hardly believe what's happening. Juhi is finally helping him. She even puts in a little more effort trying to make him feel calm. But just as things start to escalate, he abruptly stops her, claiming it's his first time experiencing something like this. Then, gathering his nerve, he decides to take the lead himself. Even so, Juhi notices that he still doesn't look settled. She finds herself thinking about Yuna, the way her friend had managed to hold herself back all this time. Juhi can't help but admire her restraint. Meanwhile, sometime earlier in Juhi's room, Yuna is lying on the bed reading a comic. Juhi tells her that she's only going to make one portion of noodles if Yuna doesn't want any. Yuna, still focused on her comic, lazily waves her off, saying she's not really hungry. But the moment Juhi finishes cooking, Yuna rushes over and steals the first bite, much to Juhi's irritation. Juhi snaps at her, reminding her that she said she wasn't eating, and insisting that if she wanted food, she should have made it herself. Yuna only grins mischievously and says, "It's always tastier when one steals someone else's food and she can eat her own cooking anytime." Back in the present, Juhi finally understands what Yuna meant. That stolen bite, the thrill of taking something someone tried so hard to keep hidden. Juhi, eyes glinting with resolve, decides to do the same. This time, she's going to take for herself what Yuna has been hiding so well. As Juhi helps Gitai, he quickly notices that she is clearly enjoying the situation. Though she doesn't say much, her body language and subtle expressions show a quiet thrill, as if she's pleased by the closeness between them. Gitai knows the type of girl she is, someone who never pays attention to average guys. That thought lingers in his mind and makes him wonder if maybe she just enjoys getting close to boys who already belong to someone else. The idea grows stronger in his mind, and he decides to lean into it. He pretends to be nervous, acting like someone unsure of what's happening, as if seeking reassurance. Juhi responds without hesitation, calmly implying that this moment can remain just between the two of them, hidden from the eyes of others. For Juhi, the entire experience brings back a familiar kind of excitement. It reminds her of when she once stole candy from the corner store as a child. The same rush, the same thrill of doing something daring. That feeling returns now, stronger than ever. She no longer feels cautious or uncertain. Instead, she welcomes the excitement, even pushing Gitai forward with subtle encouragement, as if the secrecy of it all makes everything more enticing. As time passes, Juhi finds herself slowly becoming impressed by Gitai. There's something about the way he carries himself, the way he handles the situation without breaking under pressure. He seems calm, aware, and a little clever, and it surprises her. Despite thinking little of him before, she now starts to realize that he might be far more capable and interesting than she ever expected. Meanwhile, Yuna moves quickly through the hallway, her steps sharp with growing impatience. She peers through a lecture hall window and catches sight of a boy and girl together. Instantly assuming it's Gitae and Juhi, she pushes the door open and enters, only to find two strangers looking back at her in confusion. She mutters an apology and quietly closes the door, feeling both embarrassed and irritated. As she stands in the hallway, she tries to think of any place she hasn't checked yet. Then it hits her. Club Room 1, the community service club room. Without wasting a moment, she heads there and swings the door open. But the room is empty. The disappointment sets in immediately, and frustration bubbles up inside her. She stands in the doorway, fuming silently, unable to understand where the two of them have gone. The next day, Juhi sits quietly under a shaded area, clearly distressed. She mutters to herself, struggling to believe that she missed her class. As she tries to stand up, pain shoots through her body, reminding her of everything that happened the day before. The memories rush back, and she can't shake off the feeling that she's in serious trouble. Her curiosity had gotten the better of her, leading her into something she now regrets. The thought of how loudly she screamed in frustration embarrasses her, especially since it startled people walking by. Despite her embarrassment and guilt, she tries to reassure herself. She tells herself it was simply a mistake, one that anyone could make. She promises not to let her curiosity push her into such a mess again. Deep down, she feels hopeful that Gitai won't tell anyone about what happened. She clings to that small comfort, believing that everything will settle down eventually. Meanwhile, in the lecture room, Gitai appears to be in a light-hearted mood. He sits at his desk, flipping through his notes with ease. Not far from him, Yuna watches with a dark expression on her face. Her eyes are locked on Gitai, and her irritation is visible. She feels completely ignored, especially after he didn't respond to any of her messages. Now, he suddenly wants to see her, and it only adds to her growing frustration. Jimin, sitting nearby, notices the change in Yuna's behavior. Even without saying a word, it's clear to him that something is off. Yuna later replies to Gitai's message, agreeing to meet. She tells herself it makes sense. After all, he still needs to explain what happened with Juhi. But even as she prepares to confront him, she feels an unfamiliar anxiety rising inside her. It's confusing because she is the one holding the upper hand by blackmailing him, and yet her emotions are tangled. At the front of the class, the professor is delivering the lecture. While explaining her points, she catches a glimpse of Yuna's behavior. It reminds her of seeing Yuna and Gitai together the other day. Though the thought lingers for a moment, she quickly regains her composure and continues with her teaching. Elsewhere in the room, Jimin leans toward Yuna, trying to talk to her about hanging out later that evening. She explains that she has no one else to go with because Juhi skipped class, but Yuna turns her down, claiming she can't join. Jimin feels the rejection deeply and ends up feeling even more downhearted. After the class finishes, Gitai gathers his books, still in good spirits. He starts packing up when the female professor approaches him. She tells him to come see her for a moment. A sudden request surprises him, and he feels a rush of unease, unsure of what to expect. Yuna, still nearby, is just as shocked. She had plans to confront Gitai herself, and now the professor seems to be getting in the way. The professor notices Yuna still lingering and asks if she isn't heading out yet. Outside the lecture hall, Yuna paces with frustration. She feels like everyone is interfering with her intentions. First it was Juhi, and now it's the professor. Nothing is going the way she planned. Back inside, the professor finally has a private moment with Gitai. She looks at him with concern and tells him that they can now talk freely. She gently brings up her suspicions, suggesting that he might be getting blackmailed by some of the girls and pressured into doing strange things. She urges him to see her as someone he can trust, even going as far as saying he can think of her as a mother figure, someone safe to confide in. Gitai stands silently, unsure of how to respond as the professor speaks with concern. Her words come unexpectedly, and he can't understand why she's suddenly bringing up such serious thoughts. Deep down, he knows he is being blackmailed, but he doesn't see himself as a victim. The situation is complicated, and he doesn't feel forced in the same way the professor assumes. Still, he says nothing, struggling to form a response. Before he can even begin to explain, the professor misinterprets his silence. To her, the lack of denial confirms her suspicion that Gite is being pressured into doing things he doesn't want. She recalls the moment she saw him with Yuna not long ago, remembering how strange and uneasy both of them looked. The memory fuels her concern, especially because she has always seen Gite as a disciplined, responsible student. Trying to protect himself, Gite finally responds by denying the blackmail. He tells the professor that he is not being forced into anything, but his words lack conviction, and the professor sees right through him. She senses the hesitation in his voice and reads the uncertainty in his body language. She doesn't press too hard, but gently asks him again if he has been forced into doing things he wouldn't normally do. The professor watches him closely, her expression filled with quiet pity. In her mind, she pictures how Yuna and the other girls might be treating him, manipulating, pressuring, maybe even controlling him in ways he can't fully escape. She imagines how hard it must be for him to deal with all that alone. Convinced that Gitai may be in over his head, she starts to see herself as someone who could help him get out. Believing he needs support, she decides she needs to understand the situation more clearly. She gently tries again, encouraging him to talk about what Yuna has done, assuring him that there's no pressure to share everything right away. Her voice is calm, her tone steady, and she reminds him that she's only trying to help. But Gitai stands firm. He continues to insist that Yuna and her friends haven't done anything to him. He keeps his expression neutral, even though his thoughts are anything but. He knows he can't reveal the truth, not the real, messy truth about how everything unfolded. The professor wouldn't understand how he's been involved, not just as a target, but as someone who, in many ways, has been enjoying the attention and control these girls have had over him. Still, as the conversation lingers, Gitai starts to reflect. He considers how kind the professor seems. Her concern feels genuine, and for the first time in a while, he starts to wonder if she truly does care about the well-being of her students. Gitai decides to bring the conversation with the professor to a close. With a calm expression, he thanks her for showing concern and looking out for him. He assures her that he is doing fine and tells her not to worry about him. Though his words sound polite, he chooses them carefully. Deep down, he's aware that ending the conversation this way might give him some room to maneuver later if things take a different turn. Professor Suran listens to his response and sees through his need for space. She doesn't push any further. Instead, she rises from her seat and gently accepts his decision. Before leaving, she hands him a card bearing her name and contact information. She lets him know that if he ever changes his mind and decides to talk, he can always call her. Gitai accepts the card with a polite nod and thanks her again, even though he has no real intention of making that call anytime soon. Outside the room, Yuna has been waiting anxiously. The moment Gitai steps out, she pulls him to a quiet corner away from sight. She immediately presses him for answers, wanting to make sure he didn't say anything about their involvement. Gitai keeps his composure. He tells her that he only left a few things out of his report and assures her there's nothing to be worried about. He reminds her that he has just as much at stake as she does and wouldn't risk exposing his own secrets either. That puts Yuna's mind at ease. Her tense expression softens slightly, and now that her immediate concern is out of the way, she shifts the conversation. She brings up Juhi, asking what happened between the two of them the previous day. She also questions why Gitai ignored her calls. Gitai responds calmly, explaining that Juhi had misunderstood their situation. She actually thought they were in a relationship, and she kept insisting on getting confirmation. In the end, he had no choice but to tell her it was true, just to stop her from pushing any further. Yuna's expression hardens the moment she hears Gitai's explanation. Anger starts to build up inside her as she processes what he just said. She is clearly not pleased that he told Juhi they were dating. In her eyes, it was a careless move, one that could complicate everything. She scolds him for giving such an answer, insisting that he should have known better than to confirm something so serious without thinking about the consequences. Gitai quickly apologizes, trying to calm the tension. He tells her he didn't reveal everything to Juhi and insists he was careful with his words. He adds that Juhi promised to keep everything between them a secret, hoping that would at least ease some of Yuna's frustration. Even with that, Yuna remains visibly irritated. She doesn't respond immediately, but takes a moment to breathe. Deep down, she knows Gitai isn't capable of handling things on his own, and scolding him won't change anything. She decides to let the matter go for now, though her eyes still carry the weight of disappointment. With a stern tone, she reminds him of the truth, that they are not actually in a relationship. She wants to make sure he understands there's no romantic involvement between them, no matter what he told Juhi. She bluntly clarifies that everything happening between them is nothing more than blackmail. Gitai accepts that fact, nodding in agreement, though he doesn't look entirely comfortable. Just as he's about to ask what she wants from him next, he notices Yuna starting to pull him along, leading him away from the lecture building. Confused by her urgency, he asks where they are going, but Yuna doesn't give him a direct answer. She simply tells him to follow her. What Gitai doesn't know is that Yuna has already planned everything ahead of time. She has secretly reserved a room at a motel, intending to spend the night with him without interruption. She wants a place where no one will bother them, where they can be alone and continue what she started on her own terms. However, things take an unexpected turn. As they walk down the street toward the motel, they suddenly cross paths with Juhi. The moment is tense. Both Yuna and Juhi freeze in place, surprised to see each other there. Gitai stays silent, caught between them. Yuna, always quick to regain her composure, takes the lead. She immediately addresses Juhi, telling her that Gitai had already informed her about Juhi discovering the truth. Juhi confirms it without hesitation, trying to maintain her calm despite the strange situation. And thanks her, mentioning that she heard from Gitai that Juhi promised to keep everything a secret. That statement takes Juhi by surprise. She never expected Yuna to treat what she discovered as something private, let alone acknowledge it as a secret worth protecting. Caught off guard, Juhi asks Yuna directly if she and Gitai are going on a date. She tries to sound casual, but there's a hint of tension in her voice. Without missing a beat, Yuna replies that they are indeed going on a date. Her words are sharp and intentional. As she speaks, she grabs Gitai's arm and begins to walk away with him, throwing a parting remark over her shoulder. She tells Juhi to take care of herself, especially since she heard she wasn't feeling well. Just when Yuna thinks she has closed the conversation, something completely unexpected happens. Juhi steps in front of them and blocks their path. Calmly but firmly, she says that she would like to come along with them on their date. The request catches both Gitai and Yuna completely off guard. Yuna watches Juhi closely and quickly assumes that the only reason she wants to tag along is because she must be feeling bored or lonely at home. Still, she finds it inappropriate. In her mind, it's completely out of place for someone to suddenly invite themselves on another person's date. She prepares to reason with Juhi, intending to politely but firmly tell her that it's not proper to join a couple when they're out together like this. While Yuna is still trying to explain that to Juhi, Gitai unexpectedly speaks up. He says he's fine with Juhi coming along. His tone is calm, and his face shows no signs of hesitation. Yuna turns to him, stunned. She didn't think he would agree to something like that, not when he knew what she had in mind for the night. His response throws her off completely. What Yuna doesn't know is that Gitai has his own thoughts in play. He agrees to Juhi's request intentionally, curious to see how things will unfold between the three of them. He sees the situation as something he can use to his advantage later, but Yuna, on the other hand, feels her plans are slowly falling apart. Even though she's visibly annoyed, she knows she can't back out now. She forces herself to accept the new arrangement as all three of them begin walking together. As they walk, Yuna's mind is spinning with frustration. Her carefully planned evening, the time she carved out to be alone with Gitae, and the motel room she prepared, all of it is now pointless. With Juhi tagging along, there's no way she can carry out what she had intended. While they continue down the street, Juhi turns to ask where they were originally going before she showed up. The question catches Yuna off guard, but she hides it well. Although her true plan was to take Gitae to a motel, she quickly fabricates a different story. She tells Juhi they were just planning to head downtown for some drinks. She even points in the direction they're heading, adding casually that they need to make sure they leave on time since the buses will stop running later that evening. She then asks if Juhi is okay with the plan, pretending everything is perfectly normal. Eventually, they arrive at a small spot downtown, leads them to a table and takes the lead in ordering drinks. She puts on a friendly front and even starts pouring drinks for Juhi, telling her to drink as much as she wants because she's covering the bill tonight. Though her voice sounds light, there's tension behind her smile. As the minutes pass, Juhi begins to regret her decision to follow them. She sits there, watching the awkward atmosphere around the table. The so-called date feels off, nothing like what she expected. She had imagined something different, maybe laughter, warmth, or tension between two people trying to hide their feelings. But what she sees feels forced, empty, and somewhat uncomfortable. Eventually, unable to sit in silence any longer, Juhi speaks up. She suggests that maybe Yuna and Gitae are only acting this awkwardly because she's there with them. She tells them not to hold back on her account. Trying to lighten the mood, she decides to stir things up a bit, playfully mocking their dynamic. With a sly grin, she teases them by saying they seem more like a fake couple than two people actually dating. Yuna's expression darkens the moment Juhi makes her mocking remark. The casual way she calls them a fake couple strikes a nerve. Yuna immediately fires back, saying that she's only acting calm and casual so that Juhi wouldn't feel like a third wheel sitting beside them. Her voice is firm and her irritation is barely hidden. But now that Juhi has chosen to challenge her and make light of the situation, Yuna feels the need to assert control. Determined not to let Juhi gain the upper hand, Yuna decides to play the role of Gitae's girlfriend more convincingly. She reaches out and holds Gitae's hand across the table, her fingers locking with him in a show of closeness. It's a gesture she doesn't particularly want to make, but she does it anyway. She doesn't want Juhi thinking she has any feelings for Gitae, but she knows how her friend operates. Juhi is extremely selective when it comes to men, always having something to criticize. Yuna still remembers a particular day when Juhi was with a guy who seemed perfectly handsome to her. She had assumed he was Juhi's boyfriend, only to hear Juhi casually dismiss him, saying the guy was far too ugly to be seen as someone she could date. That memory lingers in Yuna's mind as she holds Gitae's hand. She can't help but imagine that Juhi might think Gitae looks worse than that guy, like some creature not even worth her attention. That thought alone pushes Yuna to act quickly, to stop any possible misunderstanding before it takes root. Shortly after, Yuna abruptly stands up from her seat and announces that she needs to use the restroom. But she doesn't plan on going alone. She looks directly at Juhi and insists she follow her. Juhi raises an eyebrow, confused. She isn't a guy, and she doesn't see why she needs to escort someone to the restroom like that. Still, Yuna doesn't give her room to decline. She grabs Juhi's sleeve and tugs, insisting she needs to tell her something in private. Juhi, clearly annoyed, finally agrees but tells Yuna to let go of her shirt before she ruins it. She brushes off Yuna's hand and follows her reluctantly toward the restroom, sensing that something more is going on than just a quick conversation. Back at the table, Gitae waits patiently. He doesn't seem the least bit concerned. If anything, he's growing more intrigued by how the evening is unfolding. He already shared some private time with Yuna earlier, and now with Juhi involved in the mix, he finds himself growing more eager to see how things might shift again. He watches the restroom hallway quietly, anticipation building in his mind. Meanwhile, inside the restroom, an unexpected scene plays out. Yuna is ready to confront Juhi, but instead she's caught off guard by what she sees. Juhi stands in front of the mirror, calmly applying a layer of lipstick. The act itself wouldn't seem strange, except Yuna knows Juhi. She's the type of girl who barely even bothers with lip balm, someone who prefers a clean face over makeup. Seeing her now, carefully outlining her lips, makes Yuna pause. She stares at Juhi, unsettled by the change in behavior. Yuna becomes so lost in her thoughts that she doesn't notice when Juhi reminds her about the reason they came to the restroom in the first place. Juhi brings her back to reality by pointing out that Yuna said she had something important to say. At that moment, Yuna gathers herself and tries to clear the air. She explains to Juhi that she never told her anything about dating Gitai before, and she's bringing it up now so that Juhi doesn't get the wrong impression about them. Yuna then continues to explain herself. She says she doesn't really have deep feelings for Gitai. According to her, Gitai has always been the one chasing after her, and out of pressure or maybe curiosity, she decided to give in and entertain him. She admits that it's something she's been keeping to herself, but now she wants to let Juhi know the truth. Juhi quietly processes everything and concludes that Yuna is not truly interested in Gitai, but is simply dating him casually for the moment. Yuna doesn't deny it. Instead, she confirms that she's only seeing how things go and hasn't made up her mind about anything serious yet. Feeling that the tension between them is easing and they now understand each other, Yuna then decides to test Juhi. She confesses that she was actually planning to take Gitai to a motel earlier before they all met up that day. She watches closely to see how Juhi reacts to that piece of information. The moment those words sink in, Juhi's expression changes. Her mood shifts completely. She suddenly stands up and says she can't promise to leave them alone like Yuna expects. She states that it all depends on how Yuna behaves. Without another word, she walks out of the restroom, leaving Yuna stunned. Yuna tries to call her back, but Juhi refuses to respond. Eventually, both of them return to their seats. Although Juhi sits quietly, her mind is restless. The thought of Yuna and Gitai going to a motel keeps bothering her, and she doesn't understand why it gets to her so much. She begins to feel uneasy and wants to stop it from happening somehow. An idea comes to her. Maybe she can ask Gitai how he and Yuna met. It feels harmless on the surface, but serves a deeper purpose. Yuna instantly senses that Juhi is up to something and becomes visibly annoyed. She doesn't want Juhi digging into the story or asking unnecessary questions, so she tries to stop her. But Juhi ignores Yuna and proceeds to bring it up anyway. She casually tells Gitai that Yuna already mentioned how he was the one who first showed interest, and she wants to hear the same from his mouth. Gitai, unaware of Yuna's discomfort, decides to play along. He confirms that he was indeed the one who liked Yuna first, mostly because of how beautiful she is. This response shocks Yuna. She didn't expect Gitai to cooperate like that, especially since she knows the truth behind their relationship and how she's really the one taking advantage of him. Meanwhile, during all this, Juhi secretly stretches her leg under the table and starts teasing Gitai with subtle movements. Yuna, caught up in her irritation, fails to notice what's going on beneath the table. Gitai tries to remain composed and endure it, but the longer it goes on, the more he starts to question if Juhi is serious about playing with him in front of her own friend. Because Juhi does not want Yuna and Gitai to go to a motel that night, she comes up with a plan. She makes a deal with Yuna, telling her that in exchange for keeping the relationship between her and Gitai a secret, Yuna must let her pour her a drink. Yuna agrees to the deal, thinking it will be harmless. Juhi then pours her a full cup of alcohol, with the intention of getting Yuna drunk enough that she becomes too tired or dizzy to go anywhere, especially not to the motel. Juhi secretly hopes that once Yuna is knocked out, she will have Gitai all to herself and can enjoy the night with him without interruption. As the night continues, Yuna drinks several cups of alcohol. Her energy starts to fade and her eyes become heavy, but Juhi keeps filling her cup. Each time Yuna tries to stop drinking, Juhi reminds her of their deal and threatens that if she refuses to drink, she will start telling people about her and Gitai's secret relationship. Left with no other choice, Yuna keeps drinking, until she finally reaches her limit and passes out at the table. Her body slumps over, and it is clear she is no longer conscious. Juhi feels a sense of victory, knowing her plan has worked. Without hesitation, she turns her attention to Gitai and tells him that since Yuna is already asleep, she will be the one to enjoy his company instead. Gitai becomes nervous. He glances at Yuna's unconscious form, feeling uneasy about what Juhi wants to do. He knows Yuna is right there, and the thought that she might wake up at any moment makes him tense. but Juhi shows no concern. She continues acting like nothing is wrong, clearly focused on having her fun. While Juhi is still trying to get closer to Gite, something unexpected happens. Yuna suddenly wakes up. Her movements are slow and clumsy, but she sits up and says she needs to go use the restroom. Unfortunately, they are already inside one of the restrooms. Her voice sends a wave of panic over both Gide and Juhi, who freeze where they are, hoping that Yuna will not open the stall door. A few minutes earlier, a group of young ladies sits together at a table, chatting and enjoying themselves. One of them stands up and walks toward a group of guys who are gathered a short distance away, talking among themselves. The lady tries to get the guys' attention and invites them to come over and have drinks with her and her friends. She speaks in a playful and cheerful manner, hoping to convince them to join the fun. However, the guys politely explain that they are currently and cannot leave what they are doing to sit with them. The lady smiles awkwardly and walks back to her friends, slightly disappointed but trying not to show it. Around the same time, Yuna slowly wakes up from her sleep. She has been resting for a while and now feels a bit confused as she blinks her eyes and looks around. She quickly notices that both Juhi and Gite are no longer seated where they were before. Their seats are empty and their belongings are gone. This makes Yuna feel puzzled, and she starts to wonder where they might have gone. As she thinks about getting up to search for them, she suddenly feels the urge to ease herself. She stands up carefully and begins to walk toward the restrooms. Yuna enters one of the restrooms, which happens to be right next to another one. Unknown to her, this other restroom is currently occupied by Juhi and Gitai. She settles inside and begins to relieve herself. While still inside, her phone rings. It was a call from her mother. She quietly answers the call and begins to speak in a soft tone. Inside the restroom next door, Juhi and Gite both hear Yuna's voice coming through the thin wall separating them. They are surprised and quickly realize that she is just a few feet away from them. Gide becomes uneasy, concerned that they might get caught if they are not careful. He feels nervous about the situation. However, Juhi remains calm and composed. She believes there is no need to panic, as long as they remain quiet and careful. She assures Gitai in a firm manner that everything will be fine and encourages him to stay still and avoid making any noise that might attract Yuna's attention. She knows that Yuna would be very upset if she finds out what is going on, so she tries to prevent that from happening. After a while, once they are sure that it is safe enough, Juhi and Gitai quietly finish what they are doing. They slowly come out of the restroom, trying not to attract any attention. Juhi sees that Yuna is not in the best condition and might need some support, so she takes it upon herself to assist Yuna. She walks over to her and gently helps her get to the car, acting concerned and supportive. Once Yuna is safely in the car, Juhi turns to Gite and tells him that he should head home by himself. Later that night, Yuna returns home and falls asleep deeply without waking up once. She lies still in bed, completely unaware of the time passing. Much later, she finally opens her eyes, feeling slightly confused and disoriented. She sits up slowly and tries to remember how she got home, but her memory is blank for a moment. Her throat feels dry, and she becomes aware of how thirsty she is. She reaches for a bottle of water nearby, opens it, and drinks it quickly to ease the dryness in her throat. As the cold water goes down her throat, memories of the previous night begin to come back to her. She suddenly remembers how Juhi had pressured her into drinking alcohol, even though she had not wanted to. The memory of Juhi's persistence and the way she was forced to drink without a choice makes Yuna angry. She realizes that the alcohol is the reason she passed out and couldn't stay awake or remember much of what happened afterward. That thought frustrates her, and she feels a growing sense of resentment. Now fully awake, she begins to think clearly about her situation. She recalls the plans she had for Gitai and how everything seemed to keep going wrong. The school environment, filled with too many eyes and constant interruptions, makes it impossible for her to carry out what she intends. Realizing this, she starts to think of other ways and places where she can achieve her goal without being interrupted or watched. After a short while of thinking, she comes up with an idea that might work. She stands up from her bed and walks to her mother's room, carrying a plan in her mind. She enters the room and lies to her mother, making up a story about how students are being asked to contribute extra money for a student association activity. She says she needs $150 to participate. Her mother, Young, listens to her calmly and ends up giving her the money without asking too many questions. Young reminds her daughter not to lie and tells her that she's allowed to go out as long as she stays away from bad influences. Yuna feels satisfied, especially because her mother gives her even more money than she asked for. She expresses her thanks, leaves the room quickly, and prepares to go out. She chooses her clothes carefully, picking out something that makes her look more mature and composed. She takes her time to get dressed, styles her hair neatly, and ensures that she looks her best. Once ready, she heads out of the house with a sense of determination. Her destination is the same place her mother usually visits, a wellness center known for relaxation and personal care. When she arrives, she's given directions by the staff who explain the basic steps to follow. She is handed a toothbrush and shown where to go in order to clean up. Yuna enters the restroom, brushes her teeth carefully, and freshens up. Afterwards, instead of leaving or heading to another part of the building, she deliberately waits in one of the private rooms. She chooses this room because she knows it is one of the places where Gitai usually works. She hopes to catch him off guard and surprises him by being there. While sitting quietly, she starts to imagine how things will unfold. In her mind, she pictures Gitai walking into the room, seeing her, and becoming completely shocked by her presence. She imagines herself smiling confidently, enjoying his surprised reaction. She looks around and makes sure everything is in place while she waits for the moment to happen. Soon after, Gitai enters the room, just as she expects. He stops in his tracks the moment he sees Yuna sitting there. He looks stunned and confused, clearly not expecting to see her in that space. He seems unsure of what to say or do. Yuna, however, remains calm and composed. She reminds herself that he is there as a worker and that she is a customer now. With that thought in mind, she tells him to go ahead and do what he is supposed to do, reminding him in her own way that this is part of his job. Gite feels surprised when he realizes that Yuna has to go through a reservation process just to be there. Yuna, wanting to start the whole experience, thinks about how to begin. Eventually, she signals Gite to come closer, hinting that since she is a guest, she expects attention. Gite agrees, even though he didn't expect things to go that way. But her serious expression tells him that she truly wants this, so he decides to treat her like a proper client. Gite quickly shifts into work mode. Yuna, however, feels taken aback by the way he starts, as it's different from what she imagined. He warns that if she doesn't let him handle it his way, her payment will go to waste, though he knows that's not true. With no better option, Yuna allows him to continue. As things progress, Yuna starts feeling like she has little control over the situation. She senses that Gitai might be pushing the limits, but chooses to stay quiet, telling herself to stay calm and think things through. Gitai doesn't stop until he feels he has completed his task properly. Once he finishes, he informs Yuna that he's done and that they can only talk until it's time for her to leave. But Yuna wasn't satisfied and didn't know how to ask for it directly. Instead, she reminds him about the leverage she has over him. Gitai says he hasn't forgotten, so Yuna uses that to push him to continue. This catches Gitai off guard. When she sees he's not willing, Yuna decides to take control. During this time, she hides the fact that she is inexperienced, trying to act confident and efficient. Gete, being more experienced, already knows she's new to this. He has seen from the beginning how she puts pressure on herself to do well. But while she tries to focus, he notices she overlooks something important, something he, as a professional, picks up on right away.